Hello, everybody. For today's video, I specifically want to focus on insulin. And in these last few videos, I've been doing a lot of like diabetes medication specifically because November is Diabetes Awareness Month. And I've had people who start on insulin and they feel like that's the death sentence or the end of the line for them. And the truth of the matter is that there are so many reasons why people start on insulin. Now, as a pharmacist, there are times when I'm like, if we start this person on insulin, which it may absolutely be indicated at the time, we need to think about scaling them off at some point because they're young. They're 40, a young 44-year-old or something like that. So there are instances where I feel like people should come off of it. But what I really hope to get across in this video is that insulin does not mean it's the end of the line for you. It does not mean that there aren't things that you can do to help manage your diabetes while you're on the insulin, or even in some cases to help you come off of it. And I hope that I impart upon you the seriousness of insulin because although it's not like the end of the line, it is a medication that is very, very easy to overdo it on. I'll tell you a quick story. My grandmother was on insulin for her type 2 diabetes, and she was on two different types of insulin. One of them that covered meals, one of them that helped keep her, at bay throughout the day. And I'll talk about all of those in the video. And the mealtime one she took, and she didn't eat, or she didn't eat enough. I don't really know like which situation happened, but she didn't have enough food in her system. And that ended up sending her into a diabetic coma that she unfortunately did not recover from. She lost function of her brain and just didn't do well after that. So, if you're new to my channel, my name is Takova. I'm a clinical pharmacist. I work in primary care, and my goal here is to make medications make sense and to help you use medication safely and appropriately. And so, when it comes to stories like my grandmother's, there are so many people out there that are using medications that can save their lives, but they're using them in a way that ends up leading to more harm than good. And so I hope if you're watching this that you can benefit from this, and that also you can send it to someone else that might be taking insulin or that may have recently had a conversation with their provider about maybe having to start insulin soon. So I'm going to refer to my notes here just because I want to make sure that I cover everything that I want to cover. But by the end of the video, hopefully you understand the differences in the different types of insulins. You understand how insulin works, and you understand some of the myths as well as some of the risks associated with insulin. All right, so the first thing I want to state is that insulin is a hormone. It's a hormone that we all make in our bodies. If you're someone with type 1 diabetes, you likely are not making any insulin because your body's you have antibodies against the cells that create insulin. But if you're someone with type 2 or someone without diabetes at all, you should be making some insulin. Now, what insulin does normally is that it takes sugar from our bloodstream and puts it into our muscles, into other tissues of our body, including our brain. So our bodies thrive and need some level of glucose in order to have energy. That's our energy, one of our main energy sources, not the only one, but one of the main ones. And so again, insulin is produced by our pancreas, cells of our pancreas. And so once we eat, or as well as throughout the day, just slowly throughout the day, our body's pancreas is giving us insulin. Right after we eat, it gives us a big jolt of insulin to cover for that meal and get that sugar, whatever food has been broken down into simple sugars, get that out of the bloodstream and put it into different tissues of our body so that we can use that for energy. So that's why when you haven't eaten, you feel like lethargic and tired and sometimes irritable and angry because you need that energy source, and insulin helps put that energy in the form of glucose throughout your body. So that is what insulin does at baseline. So if you're someone who perhaps has type 2 diabetes, what tends to happen over time is that you have asked your body to give you so much insulin through either, not moving around as much, being sedentary, or by consuming more energy source than is needed. And so what ends up happening is that our cells, our tissues, they know when they're at capacity. I like to call it a bodyguard. Our cells become resistant to insulin when we are someone who has type 2 diabetes. And so insulin goes to the bloodstream, grabs that sugar, attempts to put it into the cell, but the cell is resistant to it because it has too much already, it has enough energy, or because it's just, kind of sick of insulin asking it to put more energy in. And so that's why it's important to, eat at very defined times of the day. Try not to snack throughout the day, because you don't want to constantly keep having your body release insulin and always releasing insulin that's then taking that sugar from your bloodstream and trying to put it into your cells all day. Like, our bodies don't need that. You have to give yourself a break. So that's what insulin is. That's why it matters. So when do we decide to start insulin? There are a few instances. If you're someone who has type 1 diabetes, you're going to be on insulin right out the gate. If you're someone who has type 2 diabetes and your condition has progressed to a point where you may not be making as much insulin as you used to, then we start to add insulin in, because the non-insulin drugs may not be working as well anymore. A lot of them help your body use insulin better. So if you're not making insulin, then those may not work as well. And then if you're someone who, you come in, your A1C is over 10, and also you have symptoms. So you're peeing a lot, your mouth is dry, you're thirsty a lot. You may be eating a lot as well. You may have blurred vision, things like that. So if your A1C, which is that kind of 3 month percentage that tells us an average of how your blood sugars have been running over the course of those 3 months, if that percentage is over 10, then, and also you have symptoms, then we usually will go ahead and start you on insulin. Now, this is a situation where, let's just say you're a 42-year-old, your A1C was really high, you were having symptoms, you got started on insulin. Go ahead and start that insulin, because you need to get those sugars down before they cause damage to other parts of your body, your kidneys, your heart, your vessels to your eyes, your vessels to your feet, etc. So go ahead and start that insulin and get your blood sugar down. But it's a situation where you could probably revisit 3 to 6 months to see, okay, now that my sugars are a little bit more under control, can we switch to something that's not insulin, and go that route to see if you can control your blood sugar without the insulin. So just because you're started on it because you were diagnosed in a really poor position doesn't mean that you have to stay on it. So that's another group of people that we tend to start insulin on. If you're someone who's pregnant or planning to be, we may put you on insulin. If you're already on something like metformin or glipizide, your provider may keep you on that. We haven't seen any concerns with using those medications in pregnancy, but some providers still like to switch pregnant people to insulin, just because we know it's a natural hormone. And then if you're hospitalized, or if you are being put on steroids, steroids can spike your sugar levels. Being hospitalized and just the stress on your body, cortisol levels increase. That whole process causes your blood sugar to maybe go up. You might be on insulin for a period of time for that reason. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about how insulin works normally in the body. Now I just want to talk briefly about the different types of insulin. So we categorize insulin based on how quickly it acts in your body. So we've got 4 different categories of insulin. One is rapid acting, another is short acting, a third is intermediate acting, and a fourth is long acting. So let's start with the rapid acting. So rapid acting is going to be medications like insulin Lispro or insulin Aspart. The brand names for this are going to be Humalog or Novolog. So this is something that starts working within about 5 to 15 minutes, and it's quick in, quick out. So as soon as you eat, your body gets that burst of that glucose source, based on whatever you're eating. And so then your pancreas would normally give you a burst of insulin. But if your pancreas is not making as much insulin as it used to, or if your cells are a little bit resistant to insulin, you may need more insulin to overcome that. So we would give you mealtime insulin, what we call bolus insulin. So we give you this shot of your rapid acting insulin, and it's quick in, quick out. And so this is the one that I was telling you about with my grandmother. You have to make sure that you have your food in front of you, because it's going to start to act quickly. So you don't need to be like at the restaurant waiting for your food, because who knows what can happen in that situation. You need to have your food ready to eat, take your insulin, and then, go ahead and consume your food. So that's going to be our rapid acting, and it's going to give us that burst of insulin that we need to cover for that meal. Then we've got something called short acting. Now, short acting insulin, there's only one type, and it's called regular insulin. Regular insulin is used more often on the inpatient side. There are some instances where you might see it being used outpatient. It's fairly inexpensive compared to some of the others, but for the most part, it's going to be used when someone is in the hospital. And this one is also used as either a mealtime insulin or as a continuous infusion. So they're just continuing to give it to you in the hospital through like a drip or something like that if someone is in the ICU. But again, that one's not a huge one to be concerned about because you may not see it as much. But it starts to act in about 30 minutes. And it stays around a little bit longer, so it's usually out of your system in about 5 to 6 hours. All right, so those are our two bolus insulins, or insulins that can be used at mealtime: your rapid acting and your short acting. Now we've got two types of insulins that should be used to help keep your insulin levels at bay throughout the day. So, as I mentioned before, right now, as we sit, if you're not eating or haven't had anything to eat for a while, your pancreas is still giving you a little bit of insulin throughout the day just to keep your blood sugars at bay, because your liver is also converting stored sugar into usable sugar. So, there's a balance that happens in the body. So, in order to mimic or copycat what our bodies are doing at baseline, for someone who's not making enough insulin or not using insulin appropriately, we can give them either an intermediate acting insulin or a long acting insulin. So, our intermediate acting insulin is called NPH. N as in Nancy, P as in Paul, H as in house, NPH. And it starts to work in about 1 to 2 hours and is usually out of the system in about 12 hours or so. So most of the time we're going to dose the NPH twice a day. So you dose it here, it has a little bit of a peak, and then you dose it again, and then it's out the system by about 12 hours. But we need to dose it twice to cover the full 24 hours in a day. So that's NPH, and that one is also used fairly commonly. Now, one thing about NPH is that sometimes we will attach the P, which is protamine. The P part of NPH will attach that to a rapid acting insulin like Lispro, for example, in order to help that Lispro act longer. And we'll put that in like a combination product. So just keep that nugget right there. We'll come back to it in a moment. Now, you've also got your long-acting insulins. These are things like insulin glargine, insulin detamir, and insulin degludec. And some of the brand names for those are your Solastar pens, like Lantus Solastar, your Levemir, as well as things like Tresiba. So lots of different versions there, and there are some other brands out there as well, but I won't get into all the different brand names. So our long actings are going to last for at least a full 24 hours. Some of them are considered ultra long, and they last a little bit longer than that, but at least for 24 hours. And again, these don't have a peak or anything. They're just going to slowly give you insulin throughout the day, and then you dose it again. So you can dose this in morning or at night. It shouldn't bottom you out if you take the right amount of it. And really, what we're looking for with here is not really to target those mealtime blood sugar levels. It's more so to target what your blood sugar is when you first wake up in the morning after you've had nothing to eat, nothing to drink other than water for at least 8 hours. And we call that a fasting blood glucose level. So a lot of times someone with type 2 diabetes, if they've been on oral medications and other non-insulin medications for a while, those aren't working as well. Your provider may start you off on a long acting insulin just to see if we can get your morning time blood sugar levels controlled. Now, I mentioned some of the brand names for these. You've got your Lispro, which is Humalog, your Aspart, which is Novolog, and those are rapid acting. Regular insulin comes as Humalin R or Novolin R, so you'll see that R on the end. Your NPH comes as Humalin N or Novolin N, so same brand names as your regular, except there's an N on the end. And then your long actings, I already mentioned Lantus, Levemir, um, um, Toujeo is a brand, Tresiba is a brand as well. And then we've got premix. So I kind of talked about the premix just briefly, but sometimes people will be started on premix because it costs a little bit less. It may be more convenient if you're someone who doesn't want to give themselves multiple injections throughout the day. So the premix will have about 70%, 70 to 75% of your longer acting insulin in it, and about 25 to 30% of your quicker acting insulins in it. Now, as I mentioned before, most of these products will have it'll be Lispro, which we know is a rapid acting, but we'll combine that with Lispro plus protamine. And that protamine makes that Lispro act like a long acting insulin. And so, it behaves as if it were your baseline insulin. So the 70 or the bigger number in those combinations is going to be your long acting insulin, and then the smaller number is going to be your mealtime insulin. So again, these are good. They help with reducing pill burden, they can help with cost, but they are less flexible. So if I know that your blood sugar is high at a certain time of the day, if you're on multiple different shots, I can just adjust the dose of that one time of the day. But if you're on a mixed insulin and you're just taking it twice a day and you've got your long and your quick acting insulin in the same shot, then I can't really adjust for that specific time of the day. I would have to adjust the entire dose. So there is some inflexibility in that, but for some people that's not a big deal. For others, it may be a problem. So some ways that we choose insulin, we think about lifestyle as well as schedule. So, what are some things that work with the patient? Of course, cost and access. So, I mentioned that sometimes the NPH can be a little less expensive, and NPH and regular insulins can be purchased over the counter, oftentimes for like $25. So, that's something that's good. Whatever the person is comfortable or confident with. So, most people now want to use the insulin pens if they have to go on insulin rather than using like a vial and drawing it up with the syringe. But some people are okay with the vials and syringe and they don't have a problem with it. And then combination needs. So maybe we have you on metformin or a GLP-1 and we're adding insulin to that. So depending on what you're already on, may determine like which insulin we decide to add on to that. So another thing that I want to talk about is just making sure that you understand which insulins that you're on and what they are doing for you. Are they rapid acting? Are they long acting? How long do they act in your body? When do you need to take it? And what are some things you need to watch out for? And so, keeping in mind like what the brand name is, where do you inject it? Most of these should be injected in the abdomen. You can inject it in other places as long as you're consistent with it, but we usually recommend the abdomen area, rotating those sites each time, and then just watching out for signs of low blood sugar. And so that'll bring me to my final point, which is how to treat a low blood sugar, which is the thing that, um, I wish I knew at the time to tell my grandmother. But if your blood sugar gets below 70, then you need to make sure that you consume what we call a rapid acting glucose source. This can be some of the glucose chew tablets that you get over the counter. You usually need to chew 3 or 4 of those to get the dose that you need. There's also like a gel that you can use. You can drink regular Coke. So, like, you want all the sugar in this case, orange juice, milk, things like that should help bring your blood sugar up. And then you need to check your blood sugar again about 15 minutes after you've consumed that rapid glucose source so that you can make sure that it has actually gone up. Now, keep in mind that these rapid glucose sources are quick in, but they're also quick out. And so you don't want them to go out of your system, 15 to 30 minutes later, and now your blood sugar is bottoming out again. So once you've gotten your blood sugar back above 70, make sure that you actually sit down and consume a meal if it's time for your next meal, or have a snack that has more complex carbs and or protein in it. So that might be peanut butter and crackers or apple and crackers, or you might have a grain bar or protein bar or something like that. But something that's going to help keep your blood sugar above that 70 mark. And I think, I tell my students all the time that a low blood sugar will put you in the hospital quicker than a high blood sugar. Both have their risk, and we don't want you to be too high or too low. But that low can really lead to some irreversible damage really quickly. So be careful with that. All right, that is all I wanted to talk about today. If you will go ahead and download that MedMap free guide below, it helps you kind of map out your medications and see what's going on with each of them. It's a guide that I put together. It's completely free. It deals with something called concept mapping, which is what we teach our students, and I teach patients to do all the time, just to draw out and look at what their medications are and what they're doing to help you really conceptualize around the purpose of each of those medications. And then if you like this video, if you found it helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and share this video with any family and friends who you feel like need to hear this information. Thank you.